Hi everyone, this is Dave at freeguitarlessonsonline.com. This lesson is in regard to amp settings. I mean, there are a million things I could go on about amp settings and basically make an entire documentary, but we're just going to cover the basics here. And if you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you have a practice amp. Just talk about practice amps for now. The first thing to be aware of, you probably can't read these knobs, but you're going to have a knob on your amp that says volume, and that one's basic. It's the loudness. Okay. Your amp may also have two channels. That's to do with distortion and clean. And most amps have that called gain. Okay, gain or distortion, and that controls how much distortion you're going to have on your setting. And if you have two channels, clean and distortion, the clean one will give you just your basic kind of clean sound, and the distortion channel you use for your lead guitar, like kind of distorted solo rock things. Alright, and then from there you've got an EQ section. Back in the day we all had EQs on our stereos. At least when I was a kid I saw stereos with EQs, and you know, the amps I used to use quite a bit playing out in bands, Marshall Stacks and Fender Twins and things like that. EQing was very important. Nowadays it's still important depending on what you're doing, but there's a lot of stuff with all the digital modeling and everything. It's not quite as important, but you should be aware of it, definitely, especially if you're going to do recording. But anyhow, the basics, like on this one, it's just bass, middle, and treble. And those knobs should be somewhere, depends on your amp, you'll have to learn to tweak and listen, but they should be somewhere between 3 and 6 on your amp. Anything lower than 3 or higher than 6 probably is going to bring that frequency out of balance. So just between 3, 4, 5, 6 even on any of these, and you're probably going to have a nice balance, because what you're trying to get is a balance of the bass, the middle, and the treble sounds to be nicely balanced. Okay, and if you have a larger amp with a larger speaker, you're going to naturally get more bottom end. This amp doesn't have a lot of bass or bottom end. This is a very small practice amp, but it works great for what it's intended. And you know, that's your EQ. Another important thing is if you are playing in a band or jamming with some people, especially if there's a drummer involved, you're going to want a foot switch, an amp that has a foot switch to change between the clean channel and your distortion channel, or some kind of foot pedals so you can do that with your feet while you're playing your guitar. And you're also going to want to make sure that your amp is loud enough to play with a drummer, but also you want to be able to carry the amp or move it around somehow. You don't want something so big that you can't lug it around. It's just a real, unless you have roadies. Okay, so the other thing is effects. Some amps now, a lot of amps now have effects built in. You know, if you have one of those modeling amps, you just basically, you don't even have to worry about it. You just switch it to the effect. But basic one is reverb, and reverb's basically gives the impression of being in a larger room with reflective surfaces on the walls, like a church or something, or a large bathroom. Gives that kind of echoey sound. And you know, a touch of that can be nice, and if there's more people in the room you might want to add a little more. That's pretty much it. Clean, it's basically in a nutshell. Clean sound, distortion sound. Decent balance on the EQ, perhaps a touch of reverb, and from there you can figure it out on your own. I'm just going to demonstrate a few of them on the next frame. See you there. That was kind of a clean sound. It's got a touch of reverb, and it's just your basic clean sound. Another thing you do with clean sound is add a touch of chorus, if you have chorus. And for picking some open chords. And of course, another tip is to keep your volumes and your tone knobs on your guitar on full for now. When you start playing in band situations more, or you're singing or somebody else is singing, you can back off on your volume knob a little bit at certain parts of the song and things like that, or to get certain kind of tones. But that's beyond the scope of this lesson. I'm just going to keep it really basic. So for now, just keep your knobs on full. And this amp has amp modeling, but you can just go to your distortion channel if you want to get a classic sound. That's it's kind of like not too much distortion, but a little, enough distortion. You'll have to turn your loudness down a little bit, because as you turn your gain up, you're going to get louder unless you have really tolerant neighbors. So you get kind of a... Let's turn it down a little bit. That kind of thing. Classic rock kind of a sound. And if you metalheads out there, you can go to a heavier distortion sound. And add a little more, echoey kind of a sound if you're shredding or anything. I'm not a shredder myself per se, but you get these kind of things. That kind of a thing. So that's even more gain. Okay, so I hope that helped you out and gave you some ideas about what you can play with on your amp and what to look for if you're going to be buying one. Once again, I'm Dave here at freeguitarlessonsonline.com. This lesson goes into a little more detail written down on my website if you want to check it out. Otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope I've inspired you to keep dusting off your guitar, keep playing, and have a great day. Thanks.